Hello, everyone. Welcome to this is not Britain's Hanging Hour, but this is another conversation I'm having once again with Steve Powell. How you doing, Steve?
I'm good, Britain. Hello. It's good to be back.
I'm glad to be back here. But today we're actually talking about Steve's book, "Love Me, Fierce and Danger: The Life of James Ellroy," which is his biography of the well-known American crime writer, one James Ellroy. Uh, but yes, Steve, I read the book and I liked it. So yeah,
That's what I like to hear. I'm so glad you liked it, and almost all of the responses I've got have been positive. Obviously, you're going to get critics. A few people didn't like it. A few people wish you'd said that or said this, but you're always making choices as a writer. So that's why I like shows like this because I get to explain my choices a little bit.
yeah. I mean, that was what I was hoping for. When I have the opportunity, when I know the author, I can have an opportunity to have them on here and talk about it. I mean, I probably would have reviewed it if I didn't know you, but I wanted to, you know what I mean.
Okay.
Hopefully, you get what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah, absolutely. I love shows like this. I think these podcasts are the new media, and I will say, from an insider's perspective, publishers are very interested in them and very much encourage authors to go on them. And I think they're great. They reach new people, perhaps people who want to read more but haven't got the time and are just starting to get interested. And I think they're great. I've done a lot of them.
Yeah, no, I actually saw a few of them, or maybe not a few of them. I watched one that you did. I forget who it was, but it was on YouTube. So I mean, I'll find it later and be like, oh, it was that guy. But
Yeah,
be like, oh yeah, I remember that. No,
yeah.
um, but yeah, so yeah, you even run the channel Elroy Reads, where you talk about
Mhm.
books that Elroy was touched by and stuff that inspired him. Which, funnily enough, last night, as of the recording of this, I actually finished A Rage in Harlem from Chester Himes.
Oh, great,
Which
great.
I don't want to get sidetracked with that, but I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was a very good book. Um,
It's great, isn't it? Kind of outrageous and funny,
kind of
and
kind of
suspenseful.
like The Killer Inside. I don't know if you've read The Killer Inside Me from Jim Thompson, but none one of those were kind of surprising that Himes got away with writing about the subject matter that he did back in the day.
Yeah, well, I read The Killer Inside Me many years ago. I think, with regards to getting away with it, in some respects in America, they didn't fully get away with it. I mean, Himes emigrated to France, and Thompson was really well regarded in France, and that France seems, you know, both as the epicenter of noir, but also a place where a lot of American writers get taken seriously by critics who,
Mm.
I mean, obviously Himes and Thompson are very well regarded in America now, but it seemed like in some respects they achieved that in France first, and that's kind of like the gateway drug
Yeah,
for a lot of
France
noir
is
writing.
funnily enough, to bring it back to Love Me Fierce and I think you mentioned that happened with Elroy as well. Like he got a lot of respect in France
Yeah.
before he kind of before he went to America.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rivage is his French publisher, and they're one of the biggest publishers in France. His editor, Francois Garif, is a wonderful man. Yeah, he's retired now, but he had huge sway in the noir fiction, crime fiction scene in France, and helped Elroy get established there. What I always find interesting is that the Lloyd Hopkins novels are really well regarded in France, and they're considered modern noir classics, whereas a lot of critics in both Britain and America regard Lloyd Hopkins as very early Elroy, him just like learning his trade, nothing too special. But in France, I think they really saw something in them.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't excuse me, I haven't read the Lloyd Hopkins book yet. I've only read Well, the first three books of the L.A. Quartet,
Mhm.
obviously, which you do talk about a bit in this. There were parts I had to kind of. Well, there was only one part you were talking pretty specifically about Bloods Are Over, and I decided to kind of just move past it for spoiler reasons. I don't know if you go into spoilers with that one, but I decided to be safe than
Mm.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah, that's understandable. It's hard to really compute spoilers in terms of an academic discussion of a book or scholarly
Yeah.
discussion. I mean, naturally, you've got to talk about plot in regards to, just its effect on the reader or just the overall analysis. But no, it's understandable. You can always revisit that section after you've read the novel, and hopefully you'll appreciate it more when the time comes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with the life of James Ellroy, I think you even bring this up in the book, but it's kind of hard to talk about a life that's kind of been mythologized a little bit by the author himself. He even described it quite in like 5 sentences. I don't I can't remember the exact quote, but um, it's kind of hard to put into words, but you decided to take on. But there was a lot of things in this book I did not know. Like I didn't know he
Mhm.
had been friendly with Samuel R. Delany, the Chip Delany, the science
Yeah.
fiction writer. Um,
Yeah, that was interesting. I don't think they didn't never quite became friends, as you and I might understand it, but they were definitely friendly, and he
mhm.
spoke about him with great affection. But Elroy was quite candid with me in terms of like I joined that reading group, which was run by Chip Delaney, because I wanted to meet women. I mean, yeah,
That's
I
a
mean, well,
theme
he
in
was a
this.
single guy, yeah, and it was a good place to meet like-minded people. I mean, he'd certainly made a lot of friends in AA when he joined there, and had some romantic adventures there, and if I guess he felt the reading group was the same way. And Chip remembered Alroy in much the same way. He was just like, well, we didn't become great friends, but like um, Chip's a very loquacious guy, very interesting. But he's like, I really admired him. He worked really hard. I could tell he was really ambitious. I mean, even then, by the mid '80s, in which he hadn't hit the crest yet, Alroy. But he's just like, I could see he's going there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, with James Ellroy, I mean, I knew the what's the term I'm looking for? Like the beats of his life, if you will. Like I knew
Mhm.
like, his mom got murdered when he was 10 years old. That had a massive effect on him. He became a drug addict for a while, and then kind of out of that, he finally got his act together and decided I'm going to be a writer. And now he's known as, if not one of the most influential ones who is still living today, probably the most. He probably like the most personally, but
Mhm.
from what you've told me anyway. Um,
Yeah, I think influential is kind of a loaded term, but in this case, it's accurate. I mean, I think that his most recent novels have definitely not been his best, and I'm just going to be diplomatic and say I think we're kind of past his best as a writer of fiction, but his influence has never been higher. I think there are a lot of writers now who are writing like him, and who've taken the influence of writing in a kind of Alrovian style,
mhm.
and that is one heck of a compliment. I think that's something that maybe all writers aspire to, and so yeah, I think influential is a good way of putting it.
I mean, it's kind of hard to think of like post World War II Hollywood noir without thinking of him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
And at the same time, I mean, yeah, James, when you think, yeah, post World War II Hollywood, the 40s, the 50s, the studio system, film noir, I mean, Elroy just absolutely dominates our thinking of that scene. But to latch onto a word you used earlier about his life being mythologized and how he's done it, in some ways, my job was to demythologize that. And that's not to say that Ellroy has been a liar or anything, although plenty of writers have been liars about their own life. But yeah, that there was a little bit of myth making that I had to cut through, and I felt that was absolutely essential to get to the bits in the book that um, to get to the bits in the book that would surprise people. Yeah, because a lot of people know the 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 fundamentals of the story: the murdered mother, the father who's Rita Hayworth's business manager, and the time in jail and the time homeless and etc. And that's all true, but there was a lot I wanted to uncover as well.
Yeah, I mean it's I guess it's like how hard was it to kind of untangle all that? Because again he's
Mhm.
talked about it quite a bit, rather candidly, maybe a little too candidly at times.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was a heck of a job. Now, if I can just give some backstory, obviously I'd done a lot of work on Ellroy prior to starting the biography. I'd done a PhD on him, and I'd also written or edited 3 books on Ellroy. So I knew a lot of the story. I was well versed in the literature, and it was actually a kind of frustration that because those previous books were academic titles, that they weren't kind of breaking into the mainstream, and I felt like a lot of people weren't getting my take on Ellroy because those books weren't mainstream. So with Love Me, Face and Danger, Bloomsbury was the publisher, which is a very good publisher, and uh, some of the legwork I did beforehand was one key moment for me that I think really cinched it was that I discovered the identity of Ellroy's mother, Jean Ellroy's first husband, and
Mm.
even he didn't know that. So that was shortly before I got the contract to do the biography. So I think that kind of bonded us in a way. I think that made him think, "Hey, I can trust this guy. He's obviously a good researcher." And I didn't press the matter with him because he didn't really want to know that much about his mother's first husband. You got, that's understandable. I mean, obviously, we don't like to think of our parents maybe as that independent minded or sexual beings in a way. But we have very kind of guarded views, perhaps, of our loved ones. So, but at the same time, so I didn't exploit it or any way or push him on it. But he was very grateful of that fact that I'd found the guy. Um, but then in subsequent conversations, he wanted to forget about him in a way, which I understand.
Yes, I mean it's I mean I didn't know that like his dad worked with Rita Hayworth until funnily enough till I think it was one of the documentaries he made. It was
Mhm.
I think it was the Feast of Death. It's the one where
Mhm.
um I think he described it where like him and his cop friends were sitting around and Nick Nolte for some reason comes to the room and you're like, what?
Yeah, yeah,
I think he
yeah.
mentioned he was like drunk or something. I'm like, what? But
Ye um, well, Elroy and Nolte were in talks about doing a big screen version of White Jazz with Nolte in the role as Davy and Foster Cline, which I think would have been wonderful. But like as you gather from the book, so much of Hollywood never comes to fruition. It's talked about, but the money isn't there. But yes, Nolte was eccentric. Eccentric. I think the clothes he was wearing were covered in dog hairs that day. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, no,
Uh,
and but I didn't know like that he had worked like with her for a long time. I did not know that Rita Hayworth was actually Mexican. I did not know that. Um,
she, yeah, well, she was Spanish American, I suppose. Yeah, Margarita Cancino. Yeah, is her birth name.
I didn't know the really sad bits about her dad, which I won't say specifically because, well,
Mhm.
this won't be monetized, but I don't want to get kicked off of YouTube for saying it.
Yeah, I understand.
Uh,
It's let's just say it's in the book, and obviously it's disturbing, and it is what it is. And I think perhaps with what's in the news daily over here, with it, I assume it's the same in the States with the
Mm.
Epstein files. It's a day by day thing. It's 24/7 coverage. So people are more inured to that sort of thing. I mean, that doesn't take away it's an evil and shocking thing that affects people, the victims, forever. But yeah, let's just say that sort of thing happened and is recorded.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it doesn't really mean much, but at least her mom like tried in that
Yeah,
sense. But
yeah.
going back to more lighthearted, lighthearted, is that a good term? Going back to more less dark material. Um, I think I remember Elroy was like, yeah, I thought he was full of shit, and then I read a biography, and then there's my dad right there.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
mentioned.
absolutely.
um,
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he had some sort of Alroy's father had some sort of association with Rita Hayworth off and on for 20 years. And the apex of it was organizing her wedding to Prince Ali Khan in the south of France.
mhm.
And that was a big event. That was the first case of a movie star marrying royalty. And
Yeah, I didn't know she did that. I always think of like Grace Kelly, in terms of that
yeah, yeah,
era.
Grace Kelly is a very of a famous example. I mean, obviously, people. I wouldn't say Meghan Markle's a movie star, but obviously that marriage has dominated the news headlines in our present day. Um, Prince Ali Khan, that particular royal line is an unusual royalty because they don't have a sovereign country as such. They just represent a sect of Islam that is scattered throughout the world, but they're very highly respected in Britain. I know the British royal family have very close links to that royal family. So it was a big deal. Yeah, it was a really big deal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess that kind of brings to James Ellroy. He was born Lee Earl Elroy. He doesn't particularly like that name. He said,
Oh, no.
I think someone said, I think in this book, it's like it sounds like a pimp name or something like that, or it sounds like a country name. um,
um, I remember saying to Helen Canode, his wife and his second wife and his true love in many ways. I said, "What do you call him?" Because he tried to get me to call him Dog. Like he's the dog, and I just couldn't. I don't know. Partly because in a kind of respect my elders type of way. I mean, I love dogs, but it's not a name I can call someone, especially a literary icon. So I always called him James, which I think is James has always struck me as a lovely name.
mhm.
Um, but Helen's like, oh yeah, I call him Dog. I call him Dog. It takes a bit of getting used to, but he likes it. And she's like, but never ever call him Lee. Woe betide anyone who calls him Lee. Um, he hates that name.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, and like his early life was. I remember texting him, I'm like, "Good lord, this sounds really dysfunctional," to say the least. Um,
Yeah, a,
yeah,
a, a lot of things. The homelessness, the drug addiction, and even before that, living with his father, I think, is when a lot of the trauma started to kick in, and the disillusionment he grew with his father because he never mourned his mother's death, and I think he was too young, and um, the murder was such a shock, but in a way, it gave him what he wanted because he hated his mother at the time. She was a disciplinarian parent, but
mhm,
in many ways, that was a good thing in terms of she made damn sure he got to school on time. But
mhm.
um,
Yeah, she seemed like the more responsible parent, even though she had her flaws as a person.
yeah, yeah, she Jean had her flaws, and it was interesting that two of the women in Alroy's life, Helen Canode and Erica Schickel, had some very bad things to say about Jean. Maybe it takes a woman to see that or say that. I mean,
Yeah, I remember you
but
said that in one of the Elroy Reads episodes. Maybe it was the one
yeah,
about Schickel's book, The
yeah,
Big
I
Hurt.
think that's the one. Yeah, Erica Schickel. Yeah, The Big Hurt. Yeah, and that was published while I was working on Elroy's biography, and that was something we talked about a lot. And it got to he was nervous about it, as you would be. Someone writes a kiss and tell about you, it's going to make you nervous.
Mm-hmm.
The strangest moment was the last moment when I read the book and he did, and there was no way he was going to read it, Alroy. So I read the book as quickly as I could, as pretty much on the day it was published, and I had to go into a meeting with him, and it was a scary one. It was on Zoom, so finally got him on Zoom. So I was looking him in the eyes, and I was just like, "Okay, James, don't shoot the messenger." But I've read Erica's book, and he was it, he put me at my ease. Actually, he was kind of good about it. He was good about it. He wanted to know what was in it, and he wasn't happy about it. But at the end of it, he was quite disarming and said, "You never have to worry about telling me anything, Steve." And so I was glad. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, with Elroy, he seems kind of like a character, if you will, to say the
yeah,
least.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh,
No.
maybe kind of difficult to deal with at worst.
Yeah, he could be difficult. I think we were a good team.
I mean, I don't know
And
about your. I was gonna say I don't want to like assume anything about your experiences with them.
well,
But just from
I
what I read in Love Me First in Danger,
yeah,
it
okay.
sounds like it does sound like he could be kind of difficult.
He can be difficult. I mean, there's a lot in the book, as you've read now, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully your viewers will go on to read a lot about friendships that imploded, uh,
There's one you
often
had
quite abruptly.
with, funnily enough, Steve Erickson, who at first I was like, wait a minute, is it the? Because I know there's two Steve Ericksons. There's the one who wrote the Malazan series, and then there's another one who writes like weird like slipstream stuff. It was the other guy who wrote the weird slipstream stuff,
Yeah,
which I thought was funny. That was yeah, that was a tale, if you will.
yeah, absolutely. And when I spoke to Steve, he didn't know, or at least he hadn't known for years, the reason for the falling out. He just got cut off abruptly.
Mm,
So, I mean, it was hurtful. I think we've all been in situations like that where we've lost a friendship. Um, if you've lost a friend over time, if you've lost touch, then I think you can brush it off. But when it happens so abruptly, it is painful. And another thing, again, because I was towards the end of the research, I was talking to Helen as much as Elroy. And Helen said, what Steve did or didn't do never really bothered me. I wasn't upset about it, but James was, and that's that. And I kind of understood that because we all have our own triggers, right? I
mm-hmm.
mean, we've all got our own history, whether it's full blown trauma or just things that remind us of unhappy events, and some of those triggers are invisible to other people, and other people can blunder into them,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes with the best will in the world. And I think that's what may have happened in that case, and also a number of other friendships that ended abruptly with Elroy.
Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, you see that a couple, or at least I did a couple times with a few people, like Nat Sobel, his literary agent for many years.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I think someone said in the book, and I'm heavily paraphrasing here, and it's like, well, James will just like, it's like, well, don't take it personally, but like one day James will just stop talk. He'll really hang out with you, and then he'll get bored with you and stop talking to him and stop talking to you. Like, don't take it personally. It's just kind of what happens. Though it's kind of
yeah.
said in a kind of ironic, somewhat bitter way.
Yeah. I think I know the guy you're referring to. Let's just call him Larry. It, it I well, people respond in different
Like I
ways.
said, heavily paraphrasing. It's not the exact
Yeah,
line.
sure. I mean, some people brushed it off, and maybe they understood deep down, like, well, hey, Elroy is a complicated guy, and he's a traumatized guy, and therefore I understand. And some people took it really, really badly, and perhaps bore a grudge for a long time. Some people can really nurse a grudge. I mean, to get back to the point about him being difficult is like I think Alroy can be difficult. He can also be immensely charming. And
Hmm.
the way I looked at it is that we were a good team at our best because we had very different personalities. I mean, I'm British and he's an Anglophile. I mean, he likes British manners and British civility,
Mm.
which maybe are partly a myth, but also obviously a lot of people do have, and I always tried to have. And it was just common sense that when you've got a guy who's that big a character, that big a personality, he fills up a room. I'm not going to try and match that in terms of energy, because there's nothing worse than two loud guys, right? So I thought of myself as just, I'll be the sponge. I want to just like kind of soak up this knowledge, all of this experience and history he's talking about. So, and I suppose that was that was why it worked. I'm good at keeping quiet in interviews. Not when I'm being interviewed. I mean, I can talk and talk, but when people want to talk, I've always prided myself on being a good listener.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good skill to have as a biographer.
Yeah.
um but kind of going back to his childhood again, it was we'll just say it was a not a dysfunctional one, to say the least. Not only because his mom got murdered when he was 10 years old, but it's just like his parents didn't get along. um his dad was kind of like a scam artist, kind of. my
Hmm.
my dad would probably call him like a bum. Yeah.
Yeah.
uh um
I'm not even a very good one at that.
yeah. It's it was interesting reading this and kind of seeing where like the Elrovian archetypes came from. Like, there's kind
Mhm.
of like those um kind of like those, like the kind of sleaze, type of people. I wonder how much of those kind of characters, like like a Buzz Meeks, or um oh, who else? Um I wonder how many of those kind of characters, because you see that archetype in his work. Like, how many of
Mhm.
those came from his dad? I'm curious. Like, I don't know if he like mentioned it specifically, but I kind of made that connection a little bit.
I think a few of them came from his dad and the kind of grifters he knew. Definitely, I think probably what Alroy added to them in fictional terms was the capacity for violence,
Mm-hmm.
which is essential if you're going to write a crime story. If there's going to be murders and slayings and everything. Whereas like Alroy's father was definitely a grifter, but he was also kind of feckless. That behind all of that swagger, there wasn't much there. He had feet of clay. So I think um, Alroy. I think maybe the geniuses of Alroy is that he can take the archetype, and then yeah, he can then create Leland Buzz Meeks, or even Bud White, even a policeman, or especially a policeman in Alroy's LAPD, the '50s LAPD,
Mm-hmm.
Chief Parker's time, the Hat Squad, is that he can blur that line and he can give them the capacity for violence. And of course, it's post World War II, so a lot of these guys would have been veterans, and a lot of these guys would have had to commit violence in combat. So they come home and they have what today we would call PTSD, but back then wasn't really understood. Maybe shell shock, it
Mm.
would be classified as a best, but trauma can stay in you, and it can be like a volcano. It can erupt after years of being dormant. So I think that's how he does it.
Yeah, it's yes, kind of dysfunctional upbringing. Like again, his parents didn't get along. His mom was clearly, or at least I think most people would probably say was the better parent overall. Like she, was
Mm,
actually like making sure he, like you were saying earlier, she made sure he got his you know work done and
yeah.
got out, took him to church and whatnot.
Mhm.
His dad was a
Yeah.
bit more like freewheeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
He's like, here's
absolutely.
these violent crime stories, kid. Go read them.
Yeah, yeah, and there was one point where the school rang Ellroy's dad and complained about Ellroy's act, this Nazi act that he was
Oh
doing
yeah.
at the school, a predominantly Jewish school, and his dad was like, "Oh, he's just looking for attention, just ignore him," and just like, yeah, yeah, so languid, so such a loose guy, you know.
Yeah, no. I mean, I guess all that changed for the worse, or I don't really know. But in 1958, his mom would get murdered.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's a story he's talked about a lot. And if I remember, he called it the defining moment of his life.
Yeah, yeah, and what was really interesting is that Hallen felt if you wanted a genesis of the trauma, it's he'd been away with his dad that weekend. He comes back to Almonte, just outside LA, and he sees this commotion outside the house. There's policemen and just people milling around. He's like, "Why are they there?" But like a policeman comes up to him and says, "Son, your mother's been killed." Those are the exact
Great,
words he
great work
knew.
by the cop there, by the way. Just straight up like sarcasm, obviously, but it's like why would you say that to a kid like that? I know it was a
Yeah,
different time, but like, show some more tact, man.
yeah. But Helen always felt the cruelest thing, the thing that she couldn't believe from that day was when a photographer took Alroy's picture and they actually gave him a saw just to just to play around, just to put something in his hands, and they actually made him pose for a photo. And she's still angry about it years on. That a boy who's just been told his mother's been murdered and is supposed to stare at a camera and straight into it and just play for their entertainment, for their copy. She said that was probably the most traumatic thing, and there was an act of regret actually because she tracked down that photo. Elroy hadn't seen it in years, and she gave it to him as a Christmas present. And she's like, "I hope you don't mind." Afterwards, she says, "I've just made a terrible mistake because I reopened the trauma."
Mm.
And that it would, but that Christmas present actually was what made Elroy do the reinvestigation into the murder and write My Dark Places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's but yeah, I mean, his mom gets murdered, and although they didn't really get along from all accounts, I mean, I imagine that you know that type of shock to his system. I can't imagine going through that, honestly,
Mhm.
and especially with
Yeah.
someone who like had such a troubled relationship with his mom. Like it's kind of haunting when he would say later like he didn't really like grieve properly till like much later.
Yeah, yeah, and I think at that age you've got nothing to compare it to. You're not you don't really know how children are supposed to be brought up. So yeah, I think yeah, it did kick in years later. Um, that trauma.
Yeah, and yeah, he ended up like I think he even said like he was relieved at first, and it's like, good lord,
Yeah,
I can't even, like I don't know, like I imagine like years later he's probably like, good God, what was I thinking,
yeah, yeah. It's hard. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you remember. Did you watch The Sopranos?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a scene where Tony's telling Dr. Melfi about, as a kid, he witnessed his father chop someone's finger off. A guy who owed him
Oh
money,
yeah.
the Satriali.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Melfi says that must have been so traumatic. And he said, no, it was a rush. And he's like, well, you want me to tell you the truth, don't you? That scene always stuck in my head. I mean, obviously, The Sopranos is a great,
Mm.
groundbreaking drama, but it shows you how people can respond so differently um, to either traumatic events or big violent events or things, and like perhaps the more appropriate response might come out later. And I think that's what did happen in Elroy's case.
Yeah, no, like he lived with his dad for a while, and then he kind of ended up realizing, like, God, he's kind of an idiot. This guy, it's like there's like couple. I think there's like a scene where he's like, God, he was an idiot, like
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
uh,
It certainly did.
they were really poor for a while, and like there was one part where like they got a dog, and then they didn't even bother training it, and it was just shitting everywhere on the ground. It's like, oh my,
Yeah,
and they had to like and they
yeah,
had to, and so people are like, oh my gosh, we have to exhume this place, get out of here, go find somewhere else to stay for a while while we clean this place. Good
yeah,
God, guys.
yeah. Well, imagine what the landlord for.
Ugh.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I think with Elroy's father is that he was always one con away from hitting the big time
Oh
in
yeah,
his head.
there's also the stories of his attempts to get rich quick schemes that just blow up in
Yeah,
his face. You're just like, oh man.
uh, yeah, and he lied to himself for as long as he could. And when I think when Elroy stopped believing him, and he started having strokes and everything, that's when Elroy's father Armand, he just wanted to die at the end. He wanted to go, even though he was only in his early 60s. He was just hell bent to die at the end, because he had been such a failure.
Hmm.
Whereas, I mean, originally, because Rita Hayworth slapped him eventually as a business manager, and apparently for years afterwards, he was saying, "Rita blew it, not me," which is an interesting perspective, on a movie star. But uh, I think like a lot of con artists, he had that narcissistic level of self belief, but eventually that just came down like House of Cards.
Hmm. Yeah, another kind of interesting detail is like apparently like I think either his dad got released from the hospital on the day that JFK got assassinated, and
Mhm.
that's what Elroy would always remember from that moment before would go on to write like American Tabloid, which I
Yeah,
thought was quite fascinating.
yeah, yeah. Well, um, they said there are not as many people around that day who are of age now, but everyone always remembers where they were when JFK was assassinated, right? Or when
Hmm.
they heard it. And that's true for Elroy as well. They say of writers, no detail is wasted. Um, and Elroy does have that keen sense of reportage and that keen eye for detail in every story and every memory. His memory was astounding.
Mm.
Um, that's something that served him very well, actually. Uh, and it was very useful for me because he could give me, lots of leads.
Mm. Yeah, and then he kind of went off the rails for a bit and became like a drug addict and
Hmm.
alcoholic.
Hmm.
He would like break into people's houses and
Yeah,
steal their panties and sniff them because
yeah,
I guess that's what he gets off on. I don't know, but it's
yeah.
which there's a
You
lot
got
of
this.
that in his work too. So it's like, okay, well. uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he knew the women in every house he broke into. He was part of that Hancock Park set for a bit because he's friendly with some girls there, even though he certainly couldn't afford a place on Hancock Park himself. But yeah, he knew those families, and he knew when they'd be away on holiday, and that's when he would strike. Um, but he always had that germ of circumspection in terms of like, in a way, he kind of knew when to pull back because you think a lot of people who embark on that path of both crime and voyeurism and everything, you think you're going to end up dead or in prison.
mhm.
And now Royal, we did do some time. I think he knew he had to change. I think he was coming up to sense of it's change or die. Those are my choices.
Yeah, that's one thing I would ask. It's like, because in the sense you kind of figure that like James Ellroy would kind of go through this like life of like he has a troubled upbringing, and whatnot. He gets into drugs and stuff, and like it seems like in another world he could have like he could have just died. Um,
Yeah.
but for
Mm.
some reason he decided to get his act together and become what he became in our world, which is just a remarkable amount of like not only discipline but like drive.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and when I think of where that drive comes from, because, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, to be a writer, although it's a very joyful thing in many respects, but the stamina you need to finish a book, and you need the hide of a rhinoceros to just get by with all the rejection and everything. But I think where that drive comes through is something a lot of recovering addicts have. A lot of the people he met in AA that first time round in Los Angeles in the late 70s had. A lot of them were very creative types, some very famous names, and they they were making up for lost time, I think,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because they say while you're an addict, you don't grow emotionally. So if you're an addict for 20 years, that's a lot of time to lose. And certainly, he didn't have any real girlfriends during his addiction years. He
Mm-hmm.
was, for such a ladies' man, he was definitely a late starter in that regard. He's 27 when he got clean, and I think it was only then that he started to have some serious relationships.
Yeah, there's one part where you talk about how he lost his virginity, and then, like the lady was like a lesbian or something later on. She was like an activist. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right then. seems
Yeah.
That seems oddly appropriate, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Susan Hellenius, I don't think there's any harm in saying her name. She's passed away. I would have liked to talk to her, but I found out that she'd passed away. But I did speak briefly to some friends of hers in what was then called the gay liberation movement.
Mm.
Today we call just LGBT community. Yes, Susan became very prominent in the gay liberation movement, and she was a playwright, although I couldn't find any record of her plays being produced, but maybe she just wrote for her own pleasure. But yeah, she became a firebrand. She became an absolute firebrand. Um, Alroy even said to me, and I checked this and he got the date wrong,
Mm.
but he said to me, I lost my virginity on Friday the 13th. Um, and that's why I'm effed from the gate. But I, yeah, I checked and he'd got the date wrong. But it's a good story. It's a good line. So
No, that's funny. Uh,
yeah.
but yeah,
That
no.
shows you how intimate you get as a biographer. I mean, when you're talking about that sort of stuff, obviously it gets intimate.
Yeah, no, there's the relationship later he has with Erica Schickel where I was reading some of it and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm surprised he even let that be published." Good lord. But
Yeah.
I don't want to get ahead of myself obviously. But yeah, no, he He did get his act together, though. I think one of his close friends during that period. I think did he go? If I remember right, didn't he? Did they go to school together?
Wait, I'm sorry, I've lost track. Who are we talking about? Erica Schickel?
No, sorry.
Who did he
I'm
go to
going
school
back
with?
to his addict period. Hold on, let me find the photo of them together. I can put
Oh,
in
his
here.
close friend, do you mean Randy Rice?
Yes.
Yeah, Randy. Yeah, Randy was a good friend for many years. Yeah, yeah, he was. I spoke to his widow,
Yeah,
Ray.
these
That's him. That's Randy. That's Ellroy with a big mustache.
and hair. What's that? Anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah. No, whenever Ellroy meets a guy with a good head of hair, that's the first thing he says. Yeah, I was just like, I want some hair transplants off you. You've got a great rug. Yeah,
Yeah, I think he makes the
yeah,
bald. I think he makes the bald look work. But no,
yeah. Yeah, well, oh gosh, yeah. There's a few women who go for that with bold look. I mean, think of Sean Connery. Was he voted world's sexiest man in his 60s? So, something, yeah,
no, but yeah, he got his act together
yeah,
for a while. I think he shoplifted books as well because he was just like, eh.
mm, yeah. Well, I think that was when you had the spinning racks in the pharmacies and the supermarkets. You know, you'd have the spinning racks of books, and it was a bit easier to take. But yeah, he would shoplift Joseph Wambau books.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
uh, but he said it was good because that began his kind of love affair with the police. He became, I mean, for a guy who's been arrested and done time, he's now something of a spokesman for the police. And there's won the Jack Webb Award by the LAPD. But it all started with Joseph Wambau. He became obsessed with Joseph Wambau's portrayal of the LAPD in his novels and his nonfiction.
Yeah, no, you know what's funny? I don't know if you ever watched Mindhunter, the David Fincher show,
Once or
um,
twice, I didn't watch it all the way through, but I did see a couple.
or even interviews with Ed Kemper. But Ed Kemper said that he had read Joseph Wambaugh when trying to evade capture because he was quite frightening. I don't want to get into that side tangent, but I didn't. But I know he was a big influence on Ellroy as well. I think Ellroy's written some forewords for some of his books, even.
Yeah, yeah, and Joe, may he rest in peace. You know, was a great guy. I was very fortunate. I interviewed him twice. Um, the first time was great because it was about his own books, but when I interviewed him for the biography about Ellroy, that's when it kind of if conversation wasn't good because I'm not sure I should go into it, but Joe seemed like he got very riled talking about other writers. Let's just say that. And plus, he was very
Okay.
old by that stage, so second conversation wasn't so good. But I do really cherish that first conversation we had about his own work. He wrote a book. I don't know if you've read it, set in Britain called The Blooding, which is yeah, Joe Wambau's The Blooding. I'd really recommend it. It was about the University of Leicester. They made the DNA breakthrough of DNA
Mm.
fingerprinting, and there was a series of murders of young schoolgirls. They're called the Narborough Village murders, and the police used DNA. They used swabbing for the very first time. This is the 1980s. And you know, Wambau was reading about it in the papers, and he's just like, I just jumped on a plane, came over to the UK because I knew this was going to revolutionize police detection. And he wrote a very good. Wait, sorry, they weren't swabbed; they were blooded. This was before swabbing, but they were blooded for the DNA fingerprinting, hence the title. The police ended up blooding every man in within, I can't remember, 10, 15-mile radius of that village because they just wanted to narrow it down. They were determined to get this killer. The killer's name was Colin Pitchfork. I'm sorry I've gone on a big tangent now, but it is a fascinating case.
I'll
And
have to, I'll have to,
Joe,
I'll have to find that. I did want to read the Onion Field that he wrote,
yes,
um, which I know
classic.
Elroy really admires.
Yeah,
um,
it's a yeah.
yeah, no, but yeah, he read a bunch. I think if I remember something, he said, "I am a product of the L.A. Library system" or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so yeah, he was reading a lot during that time. It's kind of where like, which again is quite fascinating that like he was always a bit more like conservative in temperament because he kind of grown up as like a guy. I feel bad saying this. He was kind of a dreg of society for a while. You would think that would
yeah,
radicalize him a little bit,
yeah,
which I guess
yeah,
it
and yet
did, just in a
it has
different
the
way.
opposite effect. Yeah, but I mean, you're right for a guy who never graduated high school.
Oh yeah, he was kicked out
But
of high school for Nazi act he was pulling off, and
yeah, that's just, I mean, it's pretty serious, right? Pretending to be a Nazi and
yeah,
um,
which he even mentioned a couple times. He's like, yeah, he kind of felt real bad about that. Kind of
oh
tried to
yeah,
make up
yeah.
for
You
it
think it's something you
later
have to
on.
atone for, yeah. And but I think he was very wise, really, in getting it out when he did, because if I was worried about cancel culture when I was writing the biography, because although I'm a biographer and an academic, my only loyalty is to the truth. I also didn't want to see James cancelled. Um,
It's also a real
but
funny bit in the book where he went to like a rally and he's like, "These guys are
yeah,
freaking morons. What am I doing
yeah,
here? I gotta,
yeah,
I gotta get
yeah,
out of here."
yeah, yeah. And he's always had that mirror to himself where he can say periodically, "I've got to get out of here. I've got to shed my skin
Mm.
and do something different." And especially when it's a dangerous and a destructive situation like that. And I think by writing My Dark Places when he did in the 90s and coming clean about all this stuff, he did it in a way where he would be forgiven. I'm not sure, because if you look at the big cancel culture cases, it's usually someone did a tweet 15 years ago and it's just come to light or something. And therefore people are shocked, whereas Elroy has laid a lot of it on the table, and therefore I think people process it better,
Yeah.
especially in the 90s when I think like the atmosphere was uh, I guess more cordial.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I've always, I've said this a couple times. But one of the things I've always found just so fascinating about Elroy as a writer and as a person is that there is this kind of blunt honesty about what he sees, the world he sees, and how he's lived, and about himself. Which I know a
Mhm.
part of it is like a persona, but like I think there's also I think that's just how he is. I don't know him. You've known him and spoken to him. Um, but I've just always found that quite fascinating because I find
Yeah,
that works really well, particularly with the crime genre. Anyway,
yeah, absolutely. I think
there's not really much
that's
time for mincing words.
well, yeah. I mean, I think maybe that's the essence of his conservatism, and like, I mean, he wants to stand out. If there are 10 liberals in the room, of course he's going to be conservative because he likes to rile people up a little bit. But I think a lot of that honesty is like, as a guy who's been through, say, the jail system or has been homeless and has been traumatized, he wants to tell, he wants to present the world the way that it is in a way, because he feels like there's a line in the Lloyd Hopkins novels that innocence kills.
Mm.
Um, that's actually Lloyd Hopkins is telling his kid daughter all of the nasty things he sees as a policeman, is driving his wife mad. But he says to her, "Innocence kills. I don't want my kids to be innocent." And that's a slightly extreme example, used for dramatic effect. But I think that at root, it shows you a little bit of Elroy's philosophy.
Yeah, there's also the line in American Tabloid. I mean, I haven't read it yet, but I've read their little intro. He wrote, "America was never innocent."
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we popped our cherry on the boat over and looked back with no regrets. Yeah,
Yep.
great intro.
Yeah. No, it's um, which I'd say is like as the kids say, peak Elroy, if you will.
Yeah, yeah,
No, um, but that's kind of I guess you could say it kind of it goes up from there because he starts writing. He's you know He gets a job as a golf caddy.
Mhm. Yeah,
Meets a lot of interesting people. He met Robert Stack of all people, who I
yeah,
know quite. He is beloved to me as someone who's a big fan of unsolved mysteries for a very long time. Which is funny
yeah,
how they ended up coming together again for unsolved
yeah,
mysteries.
yeah. And he was caddying for Robert Stack. Elroy was caddying for Stack the day he found out his first novel had been accepted. So that's a day to remember. But he said Stack was obsessed with shooting, skeet shooting.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and it would talk about guns constantly. Big gunner. Yeah,
yeah. No, that's funny. Yeah, I think even like, or it was either him or some friends. They would go with like, he did like George C. Scott would show up sometimes, and
yeah,
other people.
yeah, yeah. Well, the Bel Air Country Club. That was the second one he caddied at. The first was the Hillcrest, but the Bel Air really was the movie star celebrity golf club. Yeah, it was pretty exclusive. Still is.
Yeah, it was one story I thought was particularly. I forget who it was, but it was like the guy wouldn't really talk all that much. He would just go like, "Just bring the club" or something like that.
Yeah.
It was George C.
Well, I
Scott. I
think
don't know.
that may have been Telly Savalas. He wasn't talkative at all when Elroy caddied for him. And then at the final hole, they saw a gopher on dead, lying on his back, and Savalas poked it with a golf club and said, "Who loves your baby?" And then walks off. It's a great story. Tips him and walks off. Yeah, I
Yeah, no,
always thought that was so funny because he said before that he was quite curt,
yeah,
quite abrupt.
yeah, no, that's funny. Yeah, no, yeah, I think Elroy got a dog. He's well known, or he is a dog lover.
Yeah,
If I remember right. Um,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, loves
that's why him and
American
Nick Nolte
pickles.
became good friends. I think is what that was one of the
Yeah,
things they bonded over.
yeah, yeah. Well, again, oh my word, Alroy told me that Nolte would sometimes go sleep out in the dog kennel, saying, "Oh, he's a really strange guy." But then when the book came to have a legal read, because when you write a biography like this, you've got to have a legal read, to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. The man, famous lawyer who does legal reads said, "Are you sure about this? About Nolte sleeping in the kennel? It sounds like some Hollywood stars. They have good lawyers." So, well, Elroy told me, and Elroy doesn't lie to me, but I don't have verification. But then what we did have verification was on that in the film Down and Out in Beverly Hills. Nolte, who starred in the film, had admitted to eating dog food. There's a scene where he eats dog food because he plays a homeless man. So we ended up putting that in as just a little detail that later explains how Nolte is weird, and he walks into a restaurant, he's covered in dog hair on his clothes. So like, there were many stories like that, like just the eccentricity
I always
behind
think it's
it.
funny when like Elroy says somebody strange, because I'm just like, he does some really weird stuff in this book too. He's kind of a weird guy. I mean, I guess you kind of have to be if you're a writer, or at least
Yeah,
I've learned a lot of people in creative professions are odd people.
yeah, yeah. Especially in Hollywood, it's the normal guy who stands out. I think. Yeah, there's the I think really maybe especially if you're talking in Hollywood where there's big money involved, you need that probably ego or eccentricity to make it. The nice guy is not going to make it, you know.
Yeah, no, yeah, but then that's when he kind of starts, publishing stuff. He publishes the Lloyd Hopkins trilogy, which, um, we get to read about some of the relationships he formed during that time. He met Harlan Ellison one time, which, I'm sure that was, I imagine, a fun time because,
Yeah,
um, I have a good friend. His name's John Minton. He runs a YouTube channel called Talking Story. He actually worked with Harlan Ellison a long time ago at his old bookstore, and he would,
Oh,
he would tell me stories about Ellison. They would get him chili dogs for in defiance of his wife, who was trying to get him to eat healthy because he had heart problems. Towards the end there. But I
yeah.
imagine interactions between two such characters like that. I imagine was an experience.
Yeah, fiery, shall we say. I mean, they had a friendship, brief as it was, but it was definitely a competitive one. I mean, when you've got two guys who are egos like that, I mean, one woman Elroy dated, Ellen Kushner, who's a lovely woman, um, said, "Oh, Alison had the bigger ego than Elroy, no contest." Which in some ways is hard to believe, but she said, oh, Alison was a piece of work. But
Yeah, no, he made as many enemies as he did friends for sure. There are a
yeah,
couple there's a couple of instances of odd run-ins that Elroy had with celebrities. Like he had like a experience with Nick Cave once, which didn't go very well.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Again, I think maybe Alroy doesn't do well in the kind of party circuit
mm,
because if he's a room full of other celebrities, like he might see them as a challenge to him. But where he does do well is, I mean, is book readings, his tours, just meeting the readers. That's where he thrives. He just loves meeting his fans. He absolutely loves that.
Yeah, no, I've heard stories from like acquaintances of mine who've gone to readings of Elroy. It's I imagine a time. Uh,
Yeah.
he is. I've heard him be called a great reader of his own work.
Yeah, yeah, he's a particularly good reader because he knows all the cadences and and the rhythm of it, and
Hmm.
he loves dialect, all manner of dialects, Yiddish and hipster, jive, and so yeah, I
There's
mean,
another little funny story I read in here where he tried to he met a Jewish guy and he really liked him and he was trying to like impress him with like Yiddish slang he liked and the guy was not amused.
yeah, 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 yeah. I know the guy you're thinking of, who I will say is a to the point type of guy. So maybe it was just like he chose the wrong guy that day.
He
But
wasn't amused
I mean,
by Elroy shenanigans, we'll just say.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. So, but I mean, Elroy's invented a literary style that bears his name. So he loves reading his own work. I always thought it was amusing if I told him some of my favorite bits from the novels. If they were humorous bits, he would laugh uproariously as if it was his first time hearing the joke. Um, I always thought that was amusing. I got to the point where I really wanted to make him laugh because he made me laugh all the time, and I felt like, well, making him laugh through his own work feels like cheating. But one time I really did make him laugh. It was almost by accident, where I'd interviewed Thomas Malone, who was a great novelist and a great guy,
Hmm.
and Thomas was a very generous guy because he sent me interviews and he sent me manuscripts, and just a very generous guy, videos. But I said to Alroy, well, Thomas kind of reminds me of the character of Nicholas Branch in Libra, the CIA archivist in Don DeLillo's novel Libra,
Mm.
because he sent me lots and lots of material, but he didn't actually tell me much. Uh, and Alroy thought that was so funny, and then I laughed, but I said it not intending it to be a joke. It's just one of those things that came out very funny. So
Yeah, no,
so
that's
I
a
finally got to make him laugh, which is nice.
that's a book that proved quite influential on him, especially when he was writing American Tabloid. Even like there's even where he like wrote letters to um DeLillo like thanking him for writing it and inspiring him to. And he said he would always give credit to Libra when he would talk about American Tabloid that he wrote a bit
Yeah,
later on.
yeah, he would. He's been very generous in acknowledging the influence there. They exchanged letters for a little bit, and then they once met by accident in a hotel in Amsterdam. I think they were both on literary tours, and they had breakfast. But Ellroy said it was kind of awkward because DeLillo is very shy,
Mm.
at least compared to Ellroy. He said so. The conversation was a bit stilted, but yeah, DeLillo is a huge influence. Well, particularly that novel Libra. I think the only other book of DeLillo's that Ellroy has read was Underworld,
Mm.
which he loved parts of, but he felt it was kind of indulgent and pretentious after a while. It's a big meaty book, and he kind of lost his way with it a bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean that kind of brings me to. I mean, he wrote some books. They were, I would say, mildly successful, but it wasn't really until like I think the. I mean, you mentioned Killer on the Road, which sounds like
Yeah,
a really fascinating novel, even if you are outright in saying it's rather implausible at parts.
yeah,
Because he was a
yeah.
big fan of like Red Dragon. He's like, oh, I want to do something a little bit like that, and it's
Mhm.
funny, I actually, because they've been putting out some Elroy books, like they've been kind of re-releasing them. I mean, I'm sure you know
Yeah,
about this, but
sure.
like they just recently did L.A. Confidential. Or at least I've seen him at my local bookshop anyway. Um, and yeah, they did one for Killer on the Road as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Killer on the Road, I think, reads like a good B movie
Mm.
because it's
I,
totally
I
implausible.
think even Elroy has gone on to be like, yeah, it's not one of my strongest books. I
Oh,
think he even
no, not
says
at
that in
all.
here. Even
Yeah.
I could even be quoting you there, Steve.
Well, he was offered a $10,000 advance, which in the mid 80s was a lot of money to him, more money than he'd ever been paid before for a book. I think more money than the previous books put together. And he had a very short window, like 6 weeks, to write it. So he leaned very heavily into his own life story to put the plot together. And yeah, serial killer novels were in vogue, partly because of the huge success of Thomas Harris's Red Dragon. I think, although it is implausible, I mean, a lot of things that happen in Elroy's novels are implausible, but in a sense, it doesn't matter if the novel is such a fever dream and Elroy's writing style is so kind of delirious and kind of dreamlike that it's plausible while you read it, while you're kind of captured by its magic. And yeah, sure, if you were to slow it down and really think about some of these events, then that they're not plausible. And Elroy has said a lot of his writing style is quite hyperbolic at times. So, um, but well, Killer on the Road is is what it is. I suppose it's quite dispensable, but for us true believers out there, we enjoy it for what it is.
I mean, I mean, if I were trying to pick it out, I would think he would be inspired by like the Doors song, "Riders on the Storm." But I know he's not really a big fan of rock music, so probably not. But that's kind of a fun title, though.
Yeah, there's a killer on the road. His brain is squirming like a toad. Yeah,
Hmm.
he's more knowledgeable than he lets on about rock music, although he's not a fan. I think he understands the influence on American popular culture. So yeah, quite possibly. I
Yeah,
mean,
like I mean, I quite enjoyed. I read The Big Nowhere for the first time last year, and I quite liked how there are scenes where like they're playing the music, and you can kind of, where he's playing the um spoilers for The Big Nowhere, the guy who did it. He was playing a jazz thing, and Danny Upshaw's like, "Oh, that's really good," and it's very well written. I thought. Um, I know Elroy likes like old standards, but does he actually like jazz, or is he just kind of on and off with it?
well, it's interesting because Helen mentioned this.
Hmm.
Um, she she said that although Ellroy claims he doesn't like it, he's very knowledgeable about it. And, I'd watched the Ken Burns PBS documentary Jazz,
Yeah,
which
I
is
own that
history.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Ken Burns is a great filmmaker, isn't he? And
Mm-hmm.
his documentary on the Civil War, I think, is an all-time classic. But I think that he likes a little bit of jazz, but I I think like everything has its place. He's good at compartmentalizing, because he's very knowledgeable about how jazz can be a source of confusion and disorientation.
Mm,
Certain jazz numbers can do that, and obviously you don't want that from music every time you go to music.
mm,
Um, he in a way his love of Beethoven's a very emotionally violent composer in many regards.
mm-hmm.
The Kreutzer Sonata is a nerve jangling piece. So I think it's a case of what you like at a particular moment in your life. Sometimes you might turn on something because you get sick of it, but you did like it intensely at one point. Sometimes we like things too intensely and then we sour on them.
Yeah, no, if the book is to be um Love Me Fierce and Danger I'm talking about here.
Okay.
Like it kind of he didn't really kind of make it big, if you will, until like the Black Dahlia,
Mhm.
which is interesting because it's a novel I liked, but I thought was a bit messy in parts.
Mhm.
But it's one that stuck with me. There are certain passages that have stuck with me over the years. Like the
Yeah.
beginning particularly, or like when they find Elizabeth Short, because you know uh Elroy, well, one of his main kind of themes is obsession, rather it be in his work or even in life. um and Black Dahlia is one of the things he's kind of has enraptured him, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Black Dahlia might seem messy compared to the novels that followed it, as Alroy's discipline and skill just became more and more honed. But I think Alroy figured out that if he was going to write a bestseller, the story of the Black Dahlia had many elements of that. It's a true story. It's an unsolved crime. It's a crime so grotesque that it sticks out from other murders. There was the parallel that he was able to discuss as a publicity standpoint, that his own mother was murdered, and here's a murdered woman unsolved. And of course, it's 1947, Los Angeles, post war, boom town, Hollywood is thriving. It's one of the richest cities on earth. It's not the sort of place where this grisly Jack the Ripper style murder should happen, but it happens. And I think when he put all of those elements together, he's like, this is going to be the bestseller
Mm-hmm.
uh, that I've always wanted. He had thought about making it his first novel, but then I think the business side of him kicked in, saying like, I don't know how critics are going to react to my work yet. Nobody knows my name. Um, he had to put those first novels together.
The Lloyd Hopkins books, you mean?
Yeah, they were not so ambitious as a writer. So I think he'd reached that point where he's like, yeah, I've my skill is there, and I need a bestseller, and this is it. This is the book I was born to write.
Yeah, yeah. I really yeah, I mean, again, it's a which I'm sure this is what it was meant to do. It kind of haunts you even after you read it. You're just like, ugh, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it does. It's
Even if again, I find like I feel like The Big Nowhere and or L.A. Confidential. I haven't read White Jazz yet, but I find those are maybe better books, at least in my opinion.
yeah.
Some may disagree.
Yeah. No, no, no. I mean, I think that they're definitely better. Yeah, I think. I mean, they're more ambitious. I think with the Black Dahlia, having the whole story revolve around a single murder seems kind of small fry compared to the
Hmm.
things that Elroy was achieving later. I mean, when you're writing about the Kennedy assassination, obviously that's a much bigger murder than the murder of Elizabeth Short. It's a much bigger crime. It's like it's a kind of crime against the state. It might be a crime by the state if you follow the numerous conspiracy theories. So it's a bigger topic, and it requires more skill, more ambition in the writer.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's I find is but it's like I think it's mostly agreed by most people, and a lot of people like the L.A. Quartet is, aside from maybe American Tabloid, like that's the one everyone remembers Elroy for
Yeah.
better or for worse, and it's a lot of his very famous characters come from that, like Dudley Smith and Ed
Mhm.
Exley and Jack Vincennes,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think Danny Upshaw is rather underrated, personally speaking. I think he was a really great character. Um, Kind of
I
again,
think
it's
yeah.
Elroy, or kind of like what I was talking about with Himes earlier, or Thompson. How he took this subject that was somewhat controversial when he was writing it. About a gay man living in the 50s, but he does tell it with a remarkable amount of tact, I think, and even sensitivity for that matter.
Yeah,
Which is not something
absolutely.
you would generally think from Elroy, but he could do it.
Well, I mean, Elroy, the interesting thing about The Big Nowhere is it's my favorite too. I've spoken to many Elroy readers who say it's their favorite, and Elroy always bristles when people tell him that. And I think it's partly a case of, he's still, if this is going on his birthday, he's 78 today. He's still very ambitious for his age. He's still producing novels. He always wants to think that his best work is ahead of him. So if you tell him you loved a book he wrote 35 years ago, naturally he's going to balk at that.
Get a bit
Uh,
offended.
yeah. But maybe it goes back to AA and living on the streets for a bit, just meeting so many people of different backgrounds, seeing every flaw in human character. You get sensitive and empathetic.
Hmm.
Um, and Elroy's, a lot of gay friends, and like I said, several of the women he's dated are gay or came out in later lives. So, like, I think he's always had.
Yeah, he is rather fascinated with the if you want to call it the homosexual experience. Uh,
Yeah,
that's probably an antiquated way of describing it, but um,
yeah. Well, I mean, definitely. I mean, maybe it's not so fascinating today. It's just one lifestyle that's as fully accepted as another. But if you're going to put it in the 1940s and the 1950s, where people have to be quiet about it, and that there's a whole underground subculture, which today would be a visible subculture,
mm,
then and people's reputations and their marriages and their careers are going to be ruined by this potentially. And the power that could give to blackmailers or to gangsters who can extort gay bars, then there's a big dramatic potential there.
mhm.
So I think that's where a lot of that fascination comes from.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, not to turn this into like a discussion slash review of the Big Nowhere, but like,
Yeah,
I remember when reading it, I'm like, it's interesting because it's like he's not like outright that like he's gay till later. He just seems Danny anyway just seems kind of like a bit uptight. No pun
yeah,
intended, because his name's Upshaw. Uh,
yeah. Well, that's a good point. I mean, symbolism in characters' names is important. Although he told me Kemper Boyd from American Tabloid that the name Kemper Boyd was just the name of a relative of Hallen's, and he always just liked the name. It was so distinctive. Kemper Boyd. It is distinctive. Um, yeah, I think that Danny's sexuality is built up to be a surprise to the reader, and in
mm,
some ways a surprise to himself that he has suppressed it for so long that it it eventually bubbles up in a way that he cannot deny it any longer, and he pays for it with his life.
yeah. And like, there's also Dudley Smith, who's probably it's hard for me to figure out if Dudley's his best creation or if Ed Exley is his best creation. I really like Ed Exley personally, but uh, it's
Me too.
I it kind of again I don't want to sidetrack here, but I always found it kind of hilarious that um Ellroy does not care for McCarthy, Cormac McCarthy, because I find Dudley Smith is kind of like Elroy's version of the Judge from Blood Meridian.
Mm,
This kind of corruptive influence.
yeah.
Even though and again, I find their perspective even is actually quite similar. That there's this kind of moral degradation that's always going to be there. It's never going to go away. In that
Yeah,
sense.
that's really Dudley. I'm not
Oh.
sure
Oh. Uh.
it would differ from person to person, but in some ways, I think Dudley. I'm here.
Hold on. It's kind of being weird. I have to. Hold on. Oh. Oh, there you are.
Okay, I'm back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you repeat what you were saying? Because you started kind of skipping out there for a minute.
Sure. Yeah, I was just thinking Dudley Smith is the creation by Ellroy, which I think he will be best remembered for as a character on the page. Even if he's created better characters or more fully fleshed out characters, I think what Dudley has going, what Tom Ripley is to Patricia Highsmith,
Mm,
he's
mm.
just this great villain influence who at the same time is kind of attractive, that banal, but he has made Dudley a very attractive character, a character you can't wait to get back to as you're turning the page,
Mm-hmm.
because when he
Mm-hmm.
turns up, it's going to be lively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. It's I. I mean, I always feel in crime fiction, noir particularly, it's always the world to me that's the villain. I think Elroy really captures that. So I don't know if necessarily like I can say Dudley Smith is like the villain. I think the world is what the villain is if you really want to get down to it. But I do think that Dudley Smith is kind of a product of that world. Oh, what is going on? Hope you heard what I was saying. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, you were breaking up. I could hear snippets of it. You were breaking up a bit.
Hold on real quick. Let me reload and I'll just delete this part. All right, you can hear me and all that.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
What was I saying?
I think you were saying that the villain.
Yes. Um I definitely damn it. What's going on?
Oh, I can hear you okay this time. It's just the image that's.
Oh, hold on. Let me. Oh, now my mouse isn't working. It's fine.
Okay. Don't worry.
Gotta love the internet, you know.
Yeah, don't worry. My light went just when we first started filming this, so I had my own little technology breakdown.
Yeah, what I was saying is I find that the world in noir is often the villain as much as like the villainous characters are, because not to turn into like a liberal or anything, but it's I do think an environment can define a person.
Yeah, I mean, Ellroy is a strong believer, uh, and that defines how how we are. And he's very skeptical of idealism. He's very skeptical as a conservative of kind of utopian ideas. He he's kind of anti-liberal in that way. He doesn't want any policies that are trying to skew towards creating some sort of utopia. I mean, I think he broadly thinks things are getting better. Certainly, just things like that kind of brings advances that brings a more comfortable style of living, especially compared to what he remembers from the 50s.
Hmm.
He once said, "You can idolize the 50s all you want," and he's obsessed with them as a writer. But like, I don't want to live there again. I much prefer my life as it is now.
Hmm. Yeah, it's I mean, I don't think Elroy is alone in that. I mean, I think noir is kind of a, I don't want to say it's a dark genre, but it's a very skeptical genre, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, but
yeah,
kind of going back to what I was talking about. Yeah, but with like if there is like a main villain, I guess Dudley Smith kind of fits that role.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Dudley is a great character, and I visualize James Cromwell, the actor, when I read Dudley Smith now,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
James
I do
Cromwell was
too.
a memorable Dudley Smith. Although he and Elroy did not get along. In fact, from what I've read from people who were on the set, James Cromwell didn't get along with a lot of people. Quite a fractious movie set.
Yeah, no, I remember reading. I think I watched your video as well, where he says that he described Kevin Spacey as a venomous individual. I'm like, oh man, okay.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, but
But
then
that's
he,
been vindicated for.
yeah, what's funny is like
Um,
there's that bit in the Feast of Death documentary where like they ask if like Kevin Spacey's gay, and I'm just like, that aged well. Either that aged well or it aged terribly. I can't tell anymore.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think Alroy's problem Spacey is not whether he's gay or it's just Kevin Spacey treated people like human rubbish. He really he's just found him just a really arrogant and unconscionable type of person.
Yeah, I've heard a bunch of stories since what we know now that like yeah he's not a very nice man, and he had his
Yeah.
own horrible upbringing from all the sounds of it, but not that that justifies it or anything, but you understand, I think it'd be a good um
Well,
like you can understand it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think of the three people on the set who caused the most trouble, it was Spacey, James Cromwell, and Russell Crowe.
Jeez.
Um, Rus- Russell Crowe was not well liked by a lot of people on the set, liked by some people, and of course, he went on to a pretty extraordinary career, which is still going strong today. But let's just say he was just very, very opinionated and wanted everything done his way. And I think the way that was perceived on set was, you're an Australian actor. This is your first American film or one of your first American films. Why are you talking to us this way?
Yeah, I mean we're kind of oh oh yeah, we're just kind of yeah, I mean LA Confidential movie gets made, which is where I was introduced to Elroy's world from. I know he has a bit of a complicated
Yeah.
relationship with that film. Um but I mean I think it's probably the best adaptation we're going to get anytime soon anyway. Because I don't know, it's just it managed to get to the core of the story while getting rid of all the other stuff. Because, like, I remember when I read LA Confidential for the first time, I'm like, oh, there's a lot more stuff going on here. Which there is.
Yeah.
But I think what the movie did so well is kind of condense that into its most digestible form without losing the like soul of Ellroy's work. Even though I think there's a bit more the kind of Hollywood ending at the end of the movie. Even though the ending's pretty close, except for, Dudley Smith gets killed in the film.
Yeah.
But we'll ignore that.
Yeah. I mean, by doing that, they created problems for Warner Brothers are very proprietorial regarding LA Confidential. Property. But I think you're right. I think LA Confidential is the best adaptation by far, and it's going to be the best adaptation we get, at least for the foreseeable future, because things are not great in Hollywood right now. Or mid-budget period films, which is basically Ellroy, period crime films, that they take a larger budget to get all of that period detail right, and that's what Hollywood's cutting back on, and that's why Ellroy was very, very down on Hollywood in recent years. But Brian Helgeland, who did 95% of the scripting, subsequently went on to a great directing career himself. And Brian is interested at one point in optioning Love Me So Fierce and Danger, but think of it. So, but like, I still have hope that Ellroy's life story will go on the screen as a proper narrative feature film.
Yeah,
I don't want him just
he lived a hell of a life. That's for sure. I mean, from the I will say though, from like the love life we read about in here, I'm kind of unsure on how that would go, but going back to the books, I mean, then he did White Jazz, which that's where the title of this comes from.
Love Me Fast and Danger.
Yeah, no, it's a I haven't read that one yet though. I haven't actually read that one.
It's more condensed, and I think it's the better for it. It's a very clipped prose style, but it's structured almost. I would say it's structured as a dream because that almost implies kind of it being illogical, but it has got a fever dream tone to it. Let's put it that way. I think you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I read parts of it. I'm like, oh man, this is really like clipped, and it's kind of LA Confidential where he kind of comes up with that kind of clipped, I call it grab him by the throat and throttle him kind of style of prose style that he would play with. In like LA Confidential and American Tabloid, which I hope to read in sometime in the near future, which I don't know when that'll be. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was getting more ambitious in the critical attention. It wasn't always paying off in terms of the sales, because sometimes if you get too experimental and if you get, too ambitious as a novelist, there's always a danger that you're going to lose some readers. But Ellroy he's being published by Alfred A. Knopf, and they were very into avant-garde crime fiction, so they encouraged a lot of these. Broadly speaking, the sales stayed robust, so he always felt vindicated by the stylistic choices he made.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's definitely like a style you get used to, or at least it did for me. Because again, I read L.A. Confidential first, which I switched the internet to my other server, so hopefully that'll work out. I'll probably just cut this part out.
Okay, okay, no worries. These things happen.
See all that have. I mean, yeah, I don't have to worry about that. I have to edit the damn thing. But anyway, um,
Okay.
um, I mean, moving on from like his books, I don't want to get like uh um bogged down. If you, I don't want to be here forever. As much as I enjoy talking with you, Steve, I enjoy our conversations. But
Yeah.
um, Elroy's love life has also been quite dramatic, if you want to call it that. Uh,
Yeah.
he was married at one point. I'm forgetting the woman's name. Um,
Mary,
Mary. That's
Mary Darcy. Yeah.
um, who, from if the book is to be believed, this um, very like good natured lady from all accounts. From at least that's the vibe I
Yes.
got from the book. Kind of an odd choice for
Yeah.
Elroy. Maybe like the stability or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I liked Mary in my conversation with her, and you put it right. She's very pleasant and very polite and very understanding. And you might think like that's definitely the sort of personality you would need for Alroy, but I think he has got that artist temperament about always being on the move and always shedding his skin. And I think that interfered with the marriage, which only lasted a couple of years.
Mm,
And he, in the 80s, he just went through so many relationships. They were all whirlwind relationships that, and he proposed to a lot of women, and they'd all said no because they all said,
yeah,
you're too wild.
there's a couple of bits in here where he's like trying to where he's where he's where he's like getting in relationships with people.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
many women had turned him down because I think they saw in him a lot of what attracted him to them was also what repulsed them. I.e., maybe the bad boy, the wandering artist type, and they said to themselves, "You're not going to make a very good husband. You're quite good fun as a boyfriend." But then Mary came along and she saw something different in him.
Mm.
She's a kind, gentle soul, but unfortunately, that wasn't enough. So um, Elroy moved on.
Yeah, and then he met. If you don't mind, Steve, if you don't mind, I would like to do like a quick dramatic reading of a part from Love Me, Fears and
Okay.
Danger, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
If
go
that's
for it.
okay with you. I don't want to butcher it.
Yeah.
I'd feel awkward doing that in front of you.
No, no, please. I love to hear people read it.
Okay. As his marriage would soon be legally over, Elroy was free to pursue other women, and one disastrous affair would not deter him. In fact, before separating from Mary, Elroy had already met the woman who had become his new obsession, soulmate, and bride. Her name was Helen Node.
Very good. I
Yeah.
like that.
Oh, yeah, you
Yeah.
like that? All right. Very good.
Yeah, very good.
Um,
Yeah.
but
And
yeah, so he meets Helen Node, who is this lady right here,
yeah, there she is. And
who's a bit of a
Al-
firebrand in her own right. I've seen interviews with her, and I've seen her and Elroy together. It
Mhm.
seems like a good match there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if the first marriage with Mary was a case of opposites attract, in with Alroy and Helen, it's just like two firecrackers set off at the same time. I mean, she is quite the lady, and she is the only woman who's a match for him. I mean,
Hmm.
she's a very strong personality, and I cherish my conversations with her. She and her emails. Oh gosh, but yeah, and it was kind of awkward because as Ellroy and I had worked together so long, we were kind of getting exhausted with each other, and that's kind of the point where my friendship with Helen kind of took off a little bit, when my friendship with Ellroy was waning. So it was a little bit delicate,
Hmm.
but I found it very useful because Helen could be unfiltered in her opinions, and that was great for me.
Yeah, and I agree. They do seem like a good match, and I think you've even said before, like she's kind of the only person who can kind of tell him no, for
Yeah.
for for lack of a better term for it. Uh, um, which is quite fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, the people who can stand up to those strong personalities, I felt like in the 80s, and this is a professional relationship, it's not a romantic relationship. I felt like Otto Penzler could,
Hmm.
as an editor. Um, Now, Otto adores Elroy, but they haven't really worked together closely for many years now. But Otto had that gift, and he actually said to me some of the things sacking
Sobel
that
was his
Sobel.
agent. Why the hell do I keep thinking he's an editor? I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, Sobel could, could do like edit. You'd certainly give advice, at least in the early days. Yeah, and there was one particular manuscript, L.A. Death Trip, which became the first Lloyd Hopkins novel, Blood on the Moon, where both Sobel and both Sobel and Penzler worked very hard on that manuscript to professionalize it, to cut it down, to make it accessible and coherent. But yeah, with regards to other women, I think Erica Schickel saw herself in that role,
Mm.
in terms of, again, a very strong personality, Erica, very fiery. But I liked her a lot. Um,
Yeah,
the
that does seem to be because not to skip ahead, but they eventually Helen and Elroy had a bit of a falling out, I guess. I don't know.
Well, what year are you thinking now? Because obviously they got divorced. I
Oh yeah,
mean,
that's right.
they're still legally divorced, but they're back together as a couple. But um, Erica would tell Elroy if she thought he'd done something wrong. She wasn't scared of him. He didn't always listen to her, but she really felt that maybe a lot of women he met felt this way. She's like, I'll be the one that changes him. I'll be the one that makes him happy. And I suppose
It's
that's
like
an
that
ego.
meme. I can
Yeah,
change
that's
him.
an ego we often have, where if we meet someone very, very attractive who might be either a little bit shallow or a little bit dangerous, but we say, okay, they are that way, but I'll change them. And I think, uh, I don't want to speak for her, but maybe Erica would admit that that just became too impossible a task.
Yeah, I mean,
It,
I've definitely been. I am definitely curious to check out her book, The Big Hurt, at some point. I don't because I saw your review for it, and it sounded like could be interesting.
oh
Um,
yeah, I think it's a good read, and I did enjoy talking to Erica and our subsequent correspondence. I think she was a little bit cautious around me at first because she thought I was a rival, or I think in her words, you're part of his camp. You're in his camp. And I was like, look, hey, I'm his biographer, sure, but I'm not
not as
I'm not
propagandist.
partisan in any way. Yeah, exactly. That's so in the end we had a great conversation, and I think what she achieved in the Big Hurt was actually quite important. And I like to think that her book and my book complement each other in some ways.
Yes, from the sounds of it, it's almost like him and Erica's relationship that would happen later. Kind of. I don't know if it's the right term, but it kind of brought out the worst in each other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When your nerves are that frayed through the stress,
Mm.
but and the passion. And I'm just telling you now that the Big Hurt, you know, there's quite a lot of sex in it,
Oh
and I
well.
think they were quite sexed out. I'm not, I hope
Oh
I don't
oh
sound priggish, but this comes from Erica's.
oh.
Yeah, this comes, you know, from Erica, that they felt sexed out by it, and that why the relationship started off as kind of romantic and erotic. It felt like
It's
eventually they
something
were just,
new. I you know,
yeah,
I get that.
yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, when you meet someone and they first have that mystique, yeah, you want to unravel the mystery behind them. Sure, I mean, I think people do that, and sometimes if there's no genuine love there, when all of the mysteries are unraveled, you're just left with um, a sadness. And The Big Hurt is a melancholy book about love.
Yeah, I mean, I, again, kind of, we kind of jumped ahead a little bit. I mean, he had written American Tabloid, and then he wrote the Cold 6000, which is the follow up to American Tabloid.
Yeah.
And apparently, like that had like really taken a toll on his mental health.
Yeah,
Um,
he had a nervous breakdown on the Cold 6000 publicity tour.
mm, yeah, and he didn't write anything for a while after that, if I remember correctly.
There was an 8-year gap between novels,
Mm,
but there were many writing assignments, like screenwriting assignments, newspaper articles. So he, although he wasn't being prolific by his standards, he was still doing a lot of writing. But at the end of the day, what Ellroy lives for, what he wants to be remembered for as a writer, are the books.
mm,
So I think he finally got to the stage where he was just like, I've got to write Bloods a Rover. Um, and thankfully, the plot had been percolating for a few years, and he actually changed much of the plotting and introduced two female characters that were based on two of his lovers from some of these kind of post-divorce tailspin romances he'd had.
mm.
So he created something very, very positive out of things that are very negative, i.e., nervous breakdown and divorce. And that's a recurring gift of Alroy's, that he can that he can do that. Yeah,
Yeah, he did that, but like that, uh, he basically had like a breakdown. Basically, is what you describe it as in the book, and what you've described it as there. And he started like drinking again, if I remember. Um,
yeah. He relapsed.
yeah.
He was drinking again. He was also, and this is I think very dangerous for an addict, antidepressants. He was abusing them. He was buying them under the counter. He was involved with a very suspect doctor, a psychiatrist who I
Real
won't
shady
name for legal
doctor.
reason. Yeah, yeah. He was. He basically had a prescribing doctor on speed dial who could give him whatever pills he needed, uppers, downers, you know, Benzedrine, and he had to go into rehab again and get clean again for the first time since the late 70s. So um, he, in many ways, he started over. You know, he did get clean. He met a lot of new friends in AA. He said it changed a lot. Um, he was then one of the older people there. He started off as a young guy, um, but but you know, I like to think of the happiness behind it in terms of like, okay, he did get clean. The story is he was able to go back to his writing once again. He'd taken himself to the edge of the precipice, but he hadn't thrown himself off it. He pulled himself back just at the right time.
Yeah, there's a part where I think like Erica meets him in the rehab or wherever he was, and he was just plotting out for one of his books. I think it was Perfidia, and she was just like,
Mhm.
"How the hell did he? How does he do that?" Like, I think even you mentioned like her and Helen kind of were of a similar mind. Like, how can he just like get his act together like that? He bottoms out, and then he could just kind of go right back to just, oh yeah, I'm just working on this book.
It is amazing, and I mean, I've heard it said of manic depression is that you can go through periods of remarkable creativity
Mm.
before you enter a depressive period, but then when you come out of it, you go into the creativity again. So maybe that's got something to do with it. Um, Ellroy and Helen, though, became both very, very skeptical of diagnosis in the mental health field because they felt that they'd been let down a little bit by that. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to the fact that he's very, very gifted. And I think when you're that talented, you get to the point where, like, hey, it'd be a crime not to write. The same way, if he was a musician, it would be a crime not to make beautiful music, or a painter
Mm.
or an actor. I think he wants to share that gift. I mean, and I think I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, yeah, and him and Erica ended up. It didn't pan out, unfortunately. And he ended up getting back with Helen eventually. I liked
Yeah.
what you wrote in the book where he goes, where she's like, okay, and Helen basically like she put down a few ground rules. She's like, one, stop, stop chasing other women. Number
Yeah.
two, get your act together. She's like, she's almost like a maternal figure at that point, where she's
Yeah.
basically like
Yeah.
pointing the finger at him and like, you get your act together. You stop it.
Well, I'm glad she laid down some rules because, I mean, obviously we
And they
think
live
of the
like in
drummer.
separate apartments now. I think I've seen that in
Yeah,
interviews. I'm like,
yeah, they're in separate apartments down the hall from each other in Denver. But I mean, it's important to remember what Helen and some of the other women in his life went through because adultery is not fun, and living with an addict or living with a depressed person, it takes it out of you. It can be traumatizing to you. So I think Helen was quite right to lay down those rules. I think the passage of time had helped Ellroy, as he said to me. He's like, me and the women, it is over, buddy. I mean, he's like, 60 is one thing, 70 is something else. It is over. uh, but yeah, no good on her for laying down rules and sticking to them.
yeah, no, it's yeah, I do feel bad for Erica though, because Elroy did some rather odd things, if you will, to like try and get her attention. Like, I don't remember if this was her, if this was someone else. You can correct me if you want, but he would like go to her house and like howl like a dog, and I'm just like, what are you doing, man? Like,
Yeah.
again, I don't know if that was Erica or not, but I remember that part. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I see now what Steve meant when you're like, oh, just wait till you get to the Erica parts, because you.
Well, actually, that was another woman. I mean, he does a lot of howling. I mean, he loves dogs, and I think he sees himself as a dog. It's his spirit animal, but that particular moment you're referring to, that was another woman, but I'm not going
Oh,
to say her name now. I actually used a pseudonym for that woman in the book. There,
oh
are,
yeah,
there were one or two pseudonyms in the book just to respect people's privacy.
yeah, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, what are you doing, man?
Yeah,
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 no, but yeah, before I did want to go back a little bit because
sure.
we mentioned he did the investigation into his mom's murder. I did want to talk about this, which I thought was probably some of the most poignant parts of this book.
Mhm.
When he and a guy by the name of Bill Stoner, a detective, uh, they decided to reinvestigate his mom's murder.
Yeah,
Which I thought was some of the more I thought was really some of the most poignant parts of the book.
yeah. Um, that was a very important part of his life for me, and to get it down on paper. Fortunately, I was able to find Bill Stoner. He's elderly and retired now, but his memory was still sharp. And Bill Stoner was a very old-fashioned policeman, and by which I mean he had that. He was almost like a 1950s character in terms of, like, he was courtly and civil, just just a gentleman. But he'd worked on some high-profile murder cases, so
Mm-hmm.
he'd seen humanity at its worst. But it gave him this great empathy, which I think was perfect for the Gene Ellroy assignment, reinvestigating it in the 90s, talking to by now elderly witnesses about fading memories they had or maybe mistakes they'd made and all the sort of things that crop up in a murder investigation, sometimes as a tangent. But yeah, that was very important for me to get that and to go into every lead they had, investigating every lead, because they knew going in it was a long shot that they'd find the murderer of Gene Ellroy, but their philosophy was, we are going to try. We are, and Ellroy wanted to do justice to his mother that way.
I
And what we were saying earlier about mourning her in a way, mourning her in an appropriate way, in a way they hadn't done as a 10-year-old boy, you could do as an adult through this reinvestigation.
Yeah, sorry if I looked annoyed earlier. Perhaps it's a bit ironic, but there's actually I don't know if you could hear it, but there's a dog barking
Oh,
in the house next door. So, yeah,
I don't know.
I suppose that's a bit ironic there. But anyway,
Yes, the demon dog.
he's like, "You guys talking about me over there?" Anyway, uh, but yeah, no, I really felt that was quite poignant. It was kind of interesting seeing them come together, and Stoner's like, I don't know, like this guy, like I don't want to do this investigation, and he'll pull an Elroy and be like, give up the, or what was it? What was it that was said? Is like, give up the details, you bitch, you know?
Yeah,
He's like, I don't
yeah.
know, and then he like met him, and he's like, okay, we'll give it a try. And
Mhm.
there's especially the one, the bellhop lady
Mm,
who saw Gene and the man who they think did it,
mm.
and she didn't get because they usually would get like the license plate in case something happened, but she thought they looked comfortable together, um,
Yeah,
so she didn't get around to it, and that like haunted her for the rest of her life.
yeah, yeah, I did. Lavon Chambers was the name, and Al and Stoner spoke to her when she was very elderly and actually in hospital. And yeah, it did haunt her for all of her life. And she said her memory of serving Jean is that she was a very pleasant woman, a beautiful woman. I mean, she was on a date. She was dolled up and she was very naturally beautiful. And
I thought you kind
it,
of looked
it,
like Helen Mirren. I don't know about you, but just
oh, that's interesting.
just
Oh,
that
I think Elroy
photo.
would like that. I think he would really appreciate that. He loved. Well, I think like I say, he's an Anglophile. He had a bit of a crush on Emma Thompson for a while.
Oh, hold on. Where's that photo of his mom in this? It's There it is. Yeah, I kind of thought she looked like Helen Mirren a little bit.
Oh my word! You know what? I've seen that photo 100 times, and I've never thought of that until you just said it. But yeah, that that looked just like Helen Mirren in Prime in Prime Suspect. That was the thing that, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
gosh.
no, it's yeah, but yeah, I thought that was some of the most poignant parts of that book was him kind of, you know, Elroy likes to say closure's bullshit. I don't know if you could fully come to terms with that, but uh,
Mhm.
I guess with this investigation, he kind of did the best he could in that regard.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was an exhausting investigation, and ultimately, Alroy felt that it did contribute to his nervous breakdown a few years later. So when I was working with Alroy, his memory of that reinvestigation was not all good by any means.
I
But
imagine not. It was I mean, your mom got murdered. I imagine that's not a fun thing to do.
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
there's even parts where like it's even like Stoner was kind of nervous to let him look at it again because he was afraid he might have like a
Mm.
reaction. But apparently Elroy was pretty I want to say stone faced, but he was pretty calm for a good amount of it
Yeah, for a good
until
amount
like
of it, there was.
until he like like started like describing what might have happened, and then it was kind of like, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Elroy knew from the pathology report that Jean had had sex that night. Elroy wanted to believe it was consensual, but Stoner told him as delicately as he could, look, a murder followed this, so more than likely she was raped and then subsequently murdered. It would be unusual for a woman to be murdered after consensual sex in those circumstances. So those were the sort that was when it was at its most traumatic. That was when I think Stoner was worried about him, really worried about his reaction. But Elroy had committed to it. Elroy was determined to see that investigation through, and he did.
Yeah, it's I mean, I don't think it's really they didn't catch the guy,
Yeah,
obviously.
no spoilers. So
Uh no, which I guess is kind of fitting. I don't know. It's again, James Ellroy doesn't really believe in closure. If that quote gives it away.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, I mean, it is what it is. They always knew that the chances would be like 1,000,000 to 1, and I think Elroy feels like he may have exploited the memory of his mother a little bit with it in terms of like he knew aesthetically, although it was going to be challenging, that it was a good story. Crime writer reinvestigates his mother's unsolved murder. I mean,
mhm.
any publicist is going to pick that up. Any any reader in a bookshop is going to pick that up. So he knew from a business perspective that it was a very smart thing. He also knew that it was going to take a lot out of him, and I don't think he appreciated how much until it was all over, and that's the problem. But Elroy's a guy who pushes himself to the limit, so
Yeah, there is a sense that he does like to rush into things.
mm, yeah. Oh yeah, I saw that in him, and when he got an idea, he was like a grr, grr, grr type of guy. He'd want to get it done. He's like, let's make a deal. He almost sound like a Wall Street guy, and yeah, I mean, when we were working, he was together. He was getting the idea for the Enchanters,
Mm.
so he was like, "I want my agent. I want Andrew Wiley, the guy who replaced Nat Sobel, and I want Edward Castemeyer at Knopf on the phone." He's like, "I want to get them together, and because I want to make a deal, I want to get their heads together. I want to make a deal now." And in publishing, things often move quite slowly. It can be very difficult to get two, three people in the room together and to hash out a deal. But Alroy's that type of guy. He, he is kind of like I said, almost like a Wall Street guy in that respect. So I saw that. I saw that kind of that drive in him. Um,
But kind of
absolutely.
going back to that murder investigation. I guess it's a bit presumptuous of me to ask, but like in your opinion, would you say like do you think he's come to peace with it in some sense, or do you think it's just something that'll never really like be what's the term I'm looking for? That will never really kind of come to terms with.
This is where I think he's at. I think right now, in 2026, he is completely blanking the subject out as much as he possibly can. And that when
That's
his recent book,
understandable.
yeah, on his recent book tours, people still occasionally ask him, have there been any new leads? And he's like, no, there have been no new leads. We're never going to know. And he kind of shuts down the question. I will say this. It is possible that we might get to the day where he cannot totally shut the subject down. I don't want to elaborate at this stage, but like it's possible that you know new evidence might come to light. I've looked at a lot of cold cases in America, and you'd be amazed at cases that were solved after 40 years, after 45 years, after
Mm.
50 years. It's not impossible that we might have an answer one day.
Yeah, it makes me think of something that There's another. We've talked about him before. A Now I'm blanking on the dude's name. Grant Nebel. He wrote
No.
on the Salute for a long time. Did the
Good
Shield.
guy.
Um, he's done a bunch of work on Ellroy, and he remembered mentioning that like Ellroy said on like a commentary for the movie Zodiac that often old cases are solved by something old that was overlooked rather than
Hmm.
something new showing up. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it might be. I mean, DNA is a possibility. Obviously, DNA is and we were talking about it earlier with Joseph Wambaugh and his book, The Blooding, and obviously that is a remarkable tool. In the old days, it might be someone making a drunken confession in a bar 20 years later. We might be past that stage, or making a confession in a cell while serving time for something else. Now, Gene Ellroy's murder is probably dead, so we're probably past that stage, but you never know. I'll say that, you never know.
yeah, that's true. I mean, again, it's kind of interesting to think about. I mean, again, I don't want to seem presumptuous here, but it's just kind of curious. Like, where is he at? Is it just kind of like, okay, I've come to peace with it now? But I guess like I don't know, because like so much of Elroy's work about how there are just some things in life you cannot come to peace with.
Yeah.
At least from my
Yeah.
perspective. I don't know if you feel the same way.
No, I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, I've had my own trauma, and I in some ways I've come to peace with it, but not entirely.
Mm,
I think once you've been through trauma, that yeah, there'll always be a little part of you, and I think the best thing you can do is process it as best you can, and I think once you get to the stage where you say to yourself, "Okay, I'm safe now. I don't have to worry about that." I mean, that is a big part of PTSD and stuff, and that might be one of the reasons where Alroy just shuts it down. Like, as far as he's concerned, maybe he feels safe and he doesn't want that reminder of
mm.
a time when he felt unsafe.
That's possible, yeah. I mean, I guess if there was one question, it would be like, well, if they did find the guy, and if he were, well, he's probably not alive now, but if they
Mhm.
did find him, and if they, like, what would he say? I guess, which maybe he's talked about in other places, but
Mhm.
I don't know.
Well, probably nothing very interesting. I mean, I think it goes back to the banality of evil. I mean, evil people are not interesting. Creative people are interesting. Moral people are interesting, but murderers aren't very interesting. Maybe in fiction they are. They have to be. If you're going to create a character like Dudley Smith, then you have to make them fascinating. But it's different worlds, and I think obviously the circumstances of Jean Ellroy's murder are so domestic, and you know divorced woman goes on date one night. It's an everyday situation, and like I say, it was probably not a premeditated crime, because why would the killer go to places where his license plate could have been not jotted down, or people saw him, a couple of people spoke to him. He wasn't hiding himself that night, so it probably wasn't premeditated. So he may have killed again, because it may have sparked something in him. He may have developed a taste for it, but um, we're just not entirely sure. There have been criminal profiles of him. They did hire a criminal profile at one point in the reinvestigation.
Mm.
Um, of course, this was in the 90s, when criminal profiling was a lot more in vogue. Since then, it's been discredited a lot,
Hmm.
but they were trying everything.
So Mindhunter isn't entirely accurate. That's fine.
Well, I mean, Mindhunter is a period crime drama, right? So
Yeah, I guess that's true.
it is showing what what detective agencies did a lot at that time. One of the big cases that discredited it was the Washington sniper case,
Oh.
because profilers said it would be a single white guy who's doing these murders, because a lot of random shootings were done by single white guys, but it wasn't. It was two black people. And so they got the numbers wrong, they got the race wrong, they got the profilers got practically every single detail wrong. And I think that was a watershed moment where they said, okay, so a lot of profiling is wrong, because yes, some serial killers might hate their mother, and some don't. So it's people are unpredictable, and a lot of academic constructs, I suppose, began to come down when you think like the labels just don't fit well into someone's individual DNA, because at the end of the day, we're all different.
Indeed, it's yeah, but I mean it's I mean I do remember in the book they theorized that the guy might have been a serial killer, but they don't know.
Yeah.
I guess more my I thought it's like what would Ellroy say to the guy, or maybe he's written about it. I don't know, but like I don't know.
That's a good question. I mean, it's a really good question. I mean, he might just say why, um, but I don't think he'd be satisfied with the answer. I mean, because there is no answer. Obviously there's no justification for that. So I imagine the killer would just have to say, "I had to," or "She was there." Um, who knows what he would say?
Um, I mean, but getting to the end of the book because we've been kind of jumping around. I'm sorry about that. It's been kind of.
That's okay.
I mean, I keep throwing you off. Sometimes my mind runs. But yeah, Elroy. He seems to be. He's in Denver. At least at the
Yeah.
end of this, is he still in Denver? Or?
Yes, as far as I know, he's still in Denver. He I haven't spoken to him for a couple of years, but he's still working, and his latest novel, Red Sheet, is out this year. I think it's July. That's the plan. It is another Fred Otash novel. Fred Otash is the private eye ex-LAPD man who he knew in real life, who's kind of become his favorite character in recent years, and I think we're all looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's I mean, he actually mentioned him a couple times in this. Him and Elroy knew each other on
Mhm.
on like a I would say like more of like an acquaintance level, but
Mhm.
they from my accounts or from what I read from the book, it sounds like Elroy didn't really think much of him for that matter.
He certainly didn't know, as a human being. He thought he was kind of entertaining. Obviously, Otash had lived a lot, so he knew a lot about the 40s and 50s LA. He knew all the Hollywood secrets, so Elroy appreciated him in that regard. But he found Freddie to be callous, um, and glib about the lives he'd destroyed, and that's what Elroy really struggled with. It was why they never became close. By no
Mm-hmm.
means, they were not close. It was a marriage of convenience, you might say.
Yeah, no, there's another guy named Don Crutchfield, I think, who became a
Oh,
character in one of the
yeah,
I think Underworld books.
yeah,
I think in this you said like he didn't appreciate that he didn't mind being depicted, but like he didn't appreciate the fact he was breaking in the houses and
yeah,
sniffing panties.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Alroy essentially merged his own personality and his own personal history with Don Crutchfield's, who he was more fond of. He was a lot more. Um, Yeah, just fond. He liked Don more on a personal level. I think Crutchfield really wanted a movie to be made of Bloods Are Over, and he thought that would have been great for him personally, which he probably would have. But Alroy tried to tell him, "Look, Hollywood is a mess. and they mess up every adaptation, and it's highly unlikely they'd ever get to the point where the cameras roll. So that was the only thing they really argued about here. But yeah, Elroy liked Crutchfield a lot.
Yeah, it's but yeah, it seems like Elroy's kind of in a, I don't know, comfortable spot, I guess. Did a
Hmm.
did a podcast, did a American tabloid with a
Oh yeah,
cast, which I'm sure that was fun. Um,
yeah. He's
he
he's doing good.
there was a LA Confidential showing that you wrote about where he was kind of ripping on Curtis Hanson. Everyone's like, the hell? But
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That was perhaps in poor taste, as Curtis had only recently passed away. He Yeah, but Elroy, I think, is enjoying his golden years and loves to work and lives to work. So putting out this new Fred Otesh novel, I'm sure, is giving him a great deal of satisfaction, and then it'll be straight on to the next one.
yeah, it's gonna be out in June, I think.
Yeah, Red Sheet is June, July.
Yeah.
That's provisional plan. It's hard to tell with publishing deadlines because they change, but it's definitely this year. There's no stopping it.
Oh, hold on. Let me find the end. Let me find the end line of this book. Um, and it kind of comes full circle when you end up meeting him and writing this book. And I like the last line here, which is, "I always get what I want." Elroy wrote in the Hilliker Curse. "It comes slow or fast and always costs a great deal."
Yeah, yeah, that's true, and I mean it's true to his life. I think it's true to many of our lives, and I thought that's a good mic drop to end the book on.
Yeah, I know we've already kind of talked about this. The Hilliker Curse is the one book from Elroy I kind of don't want to read because it just sounds.
Yeah,
I think you've even said that he kind of regrets putting it to print.
definitely. Yeah. Oh yeah. He talked about wanting it to go out of print.
Mm.
Yeah. And there's not many writers who would say that about one of the books. He really. I suppose if he was going to be pedantic about it, he could pull it himself. Although with the
He could pull a Stephen King with Rage and just pull it and be like, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose he could. I don't know whether the publishers would have a more controlling interest in it, but the publishers were not keen on that memoir from the start. And Elroy, again, fools rush in. He used his clout to make them publish it.
I think even say in the book, Helen was like, "Don't do this, please," and he's like, "No, it'll be fine." And then he's like, "Damn it, I shouldn't have done
Yeah,
that."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that is one of the regrets of his professional career, that memoir. But I mean, as a biographer, as a researcher, it's useful for me. It's more details about his life. So, it,
Must have
it,
been nice,
it,
he's written two memoirs about himself. You can kind of delve into his head a little bit. At least at that time, he's probably different now.
yeah, I mean, it's useful that he is a memoirist. I could use that, but I would always have to test each story or each anecdote, every source, because um, either people make mistakes, or I don't think Elroy was a liar in any way in his memoirs, but I wanted to test the sources for credibility and stuff, and I just felt that was important. So again, just in case if there are elements of his life story that needs to be demythologized.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's I mean, there's sure there's other I'm sure there's more to be said, of course, yeah, but I quite enjoyed Love Me Fierce and Danger. It was a good book.
Thank
Again,
you.
I was telling you this earlier. I don't remember the last time I actually read a biography. I I don't even know. But anyway, but yeah, James Ellroy's an author I've enjoyed for a long time. I think he's, if not one of the best, he definitely is like the best who's still living right now of, like, crime
Mhm.
literature anyway.
Well, thank you. I appreciate how much you really enjoyed the biography, and I'm glad it might be the biography that has brought you back to the genre.
The biography game, yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
yeah. I'll have to, yeah. I'll just be getting the Alexander Hamilton one from Ron Chernow. I've been wanting to read for a long time. Uh,
Okay.
that big chunker.
No, it's a meaty one.
But thank you, Steve, so much for giving your time. Probably gonna edit some of this because the internet kaputs from earlier. But what are you gonna do?
Sure.
But
Sure. No,
thank you,
it's been my
Steve.
pleasure.
Uh,
Thank you for having me on, Bersan.
um, yeah, and thank you for writing this book. It was a good book, I think.
Oh,
And
thank you. Thank you.
uh,
Well, I hope your readers enjoy it, and I hope it brings more people back to reading James Ellroy. Um, he is a great writer, and I always tried to get that out in his life story. I mean, there's some questionable behavior from him, no doubt about it, but he is a really special, gifted writer, and I hope that comes through.
yeah, no, he's a unique individual. I'll just say that. And
Mhm.
but again, thank you, Steve, for coming on here. I hope we could talk again at some point in the in.
Sure, I'd love to.
I'm sure I have some other ideas of because I have a million ideas running at once always, but anyway. Uh,
Okay.
but thank you, Steve. Seriously though, if you have any, before we wrap up here, if you have any social media, feel free to share it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a website. It's called Venetian Vase, and that's crime fiction commentary. A lot of my Elroy research is there. That's Venetian Vase. The YouTube show is called Elroy Reads. Pop along, watch a video, subscribe. I think everyone you'll love the content out there. Um, on X, I'm at Elroy Reader. I mean, I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, he does run a good channel. He's turned me on to some interesting books. I'll just say that.
Okay.
But yes, thank you again, Steve, for coming on, and hopefully when this comes out, I'm really hoping to put this out on Elroy's birthday because it falls on one of the days I'm uploading this. That would be
Okay.
fun. But I'm gonna be on
Okay.
vacation in a few weeks, so we'll see how that works out. Um,
Oh, are you going anywhere nice?
Florida, yeah.
Oh, lovely. Lovely.
But anyway, again, thank you, Steve, very much for coming on here. I hope we can hang out and talk again soon about either Elroy related book or maybe something non Elroy related. I don't know. But thank you
Sure,
again.
sure. If something comes along, we can do another show. I'd be happy to do that.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. And, well, until next time. Oh.
Bye bye.